Race found Poirot still sitting in the saloon. "Well, Poirot, what about it? Pennington's due in 10 minutes. I'm leaving this in your hands." Poirot rose quickly to his feet. "First, get hold of young Fanthorpe." "Fanthorpe?" "Yes. Bring him to my cabin." Race nodded and went off. Poirot went along to his cabin. Race arrived with young Fanthorpe a minute or two afterwards. Poirot indicated chairs and offered cigarettes. "Now, Monsieur Fanthorpe, to our business. I perceive that you wear the same tie that my friend Hastings wears." Jim Fanthorpe looked down at his neckwear with some bewilderment. "It's an OE tie." "Exactly. You must understand that though I am a foreigner, I know something of the English point of view. I know, for instance, that there are things which are done and things which are not done." "Well, we don't say that sort of thing much nowadays, sir." "Perhaps not, but it is the custom. It still remains. The old school tie is the old school tie, and there are certain things, and I know it from experience, that the old school tie does not do." "One of these, Monsieur Fanthorpe, is to butt into a private conversation unasked when one does not know the people who are conducting it." "What?" "The other day, Monsieur Fanthorpe, that is exactly what you did do. Certain persons were quietly transacting some private business in the observation saloon. You strolled near them, obviously in order to overhear what it was that was in progress, and presently you actually turned round and congratulated a lady, Madame Simon Doyle, on the soundness of her business methods." Jim Fanthorpe's face got very red. Poirot swept on, not waiting for comment. "Now that, Monsieur Fanthorpe, was not at all the behaviour of one who wears a tie similar to that worn by my friend Hastings. Hastings! He is all delicacy. He would die of shame before he did such a thing. Therefore, taking that action of yours in conjunction with the fact that you are a very young man to be able to afford such an expensive holiday, that you are a member of a country solicitor's firm and therefore probably not extravagantly well off, and that you show no signs of recent illness such as might necessitate a prolonged visit abroad. So I ask myself, and am now asking you, what is the reason for your presence on this boat?" "I decline to give you any information whatever, Monsieur Poirot. I really think you must be mad." "I am not mad. I am very, very sane." "Where is your firm?" "In Northampton. It is not very far from Woad Hall." "What conversation did you try to overhear?" "One concerning legal documents." "What was the object of your remark?" "A remark which you uttered with obvious embarrassment and malaise." "Your object was to prevent Madame Doyle from signing any document unread." "On this boat we have had a murder, and following that murder 2 other murders in rapid succession. If I further give you the information that the weapon which killed Madame Otterbourne was a revolver owned by Monsieur Andrew Pennington, then perhaps you will realize that it is actually your duty to tell us all that you can." Jim Fanthorpe was silent for some minutes. At last he said, "You've rather an odd way of going about things, Monsieur Poirot, but I appreciate the points you make. The trouble is that I have no exact information to lay before you." "You mean that it is a case merely of suspicion?" "Yes." "And therefore you think it injudicious to speak?" "That may be true, legally speaking, but this is not a court of law. Colonel Race and myself are endeavouring to track down a murderer. Anything that can help us to do that may be valuable." "Very well. What is it you want to know?" "Why did you come on this trip?" "My uncle, Mr. Carmichael, was Mrs. Doyle's English solicitor, and he sent me. He handled a good many of her affairs. In this way he was often in correspondence with Mr. Andrew Pennington, who was Mrs. Doyle's American trustee. Several small incidents, I cannot enumerate them all, they made my uncle suspicious. He felt all was not quite as it should be." "In plain language, your uncle suspected Pennington was a crook." "Well, you put it more bluntly than I should, but the main idea is correct. Various excuses made by Pennington, certain plausible explanations of a disposal of funds, They aroused my uncle's distrust. While these suspicions of his were still nebulous, Miss Ridgway married unexpectedly and went off on her honeymoon to Egypt. Her marriage relieved my uncle's mind, as he knew that on her return to England the estate would have to be formally settled and handed over. However, in a letter she wrote him from Cairo, she mentioned casually that she'd unexpectedly run across Andrew Pennington. My uncle's suspicions became acute. He felt sure that Pennington, perhaps by now in a desperate position, was going to try and obtain signatures from her which would cover his own defalcations. Since my uncle had no definite evidence to lay before her, he was in a most difficult position. The only thing he could think of was to send me here, travelling by air, with instruction to discover what was in the wind. I was to keep my eyes open and act summarily if necessary. It's a most unpleasant mission, I can assure you. As a matter of fact, on the occasion you mention, I had to behave more or less like a cad. It was awkward. But on the whole, I was satisfied with the result.
You mean you put Madame Doyle on her guard?
Not so much that, but I think I'd put the wind up Pennington. I felt convinced he wouldn't try any more funny business for some time, and by then I hoped to have got intimate enough with Mr. and Mrs. Doyle to convey some sort of warning. As a matter of fact, I hoped to do so through Doyle. Mrs. Doyle was so attached to Mr. Pennington that it would have been a bit awkward to suggest things to her about him. It would have been much easier to approach the husband. Race nodded. "Will you give me a candid opinion on one point, Monsieur Fanthorpe? If you were engaged in putting a swindle over, would you choose Madame Doyle or Monsieur Doyle as a victim?" "Well, Mr. Doyle every time. Lynette Doyle was very shrewd in business matters. Her husband, I should fancy, is one of those trustful fellows who knows nothing of business, always ready to sign on the dotted line, as he himself put it." "I agree. And where is your motive, Colonel?" "But this is all pure conjecture. It isn't evidence." "Oh, we will get evidence. How?" "Possibly from Mr. Pennington himself." I very much wonder."
"He's about due now, actually."
Well, I'll leave you to it, if you don't mind." 2 minutes later, Andrew Pennington made his appearance. His manner was all smiling urbanity. Only the taut line of his jaw and the wariness of his eyes betrayed the fact that a thoroughly experienced fighter was on his guard.
"Well, gentlemen, here I am."
He sat down and looked at them inquiringly.
"We asked you to come here, Monsieur Pennington, because it is fairly obvious that you have a very special and immediate interest in the case."
"Well, is that so?"
"Surely you have known Lynette Ridgway, I understand, since she was quite a child."
"Oh, that... Well, I beg pardon, I didn't quite get you. Yes, as I told you this morning, I've known Lynette since she was a cute little thing in pinafores."
"You were on terms of close intimacy with her father?"
"Yes, that's so. Melhuish Ridgway and I were very close, very close."
"You were so immediately associated that on his death he appointed you business guardian to his daughter, and trustee to the vast fortune she inherited?"
"Well, roughly that is so. I was not the only trustee, naturally. Others were associated with me."
"Who have since died?"
"Oh, 2 of them are dead, yes. But the other, Mr. Sterndale Rockford, is alive."
"Your partner?"
"Yes. Mademoiselle Ridgway, I understand, was not yet of age when she married. She would have been 21 next July."
"And in the normal course of events she would have come into control of her fortune then?"
"Yes."
"But her marriage precipitated matters?"
Pennington's jaw hardened. He shot out his chin at them aggressively.
"You'll pardon me, gentlemen, but what exact business is all this of yours?"
"If you dislike answering the question—"
"There is no dislike about it, sir. I don't mind what you ask me, but I do not see the relevance of all this."
"Oh, but surely, Monsieur Pennington—"
Poirot leaned forward, his eyes green and cat-like.
"There is the question of motive.
In considering that, financial considerations must always be taken into account."
"By Ridgway's will, Lynette got control of her dough when she was 21 or when she married."
"No conditions of any kind?"
"No conditions."
"And it is a matter, I am credibly assured, of millions."
"Millions it is."
"Your responsibility, Mr. Pennington, and that of your partner,
has been a very grave one.
We're used to responsibility, sir. It doesn't worry us any.
I was wondering, Mr. Pennington, whether Lynette Ridgway's sudden marriage caused any consternation in your office.
Consternation?
That was the word I used.
What the hell are you driving at?
Something quite simple. Are Lynette Doyle's affairs in the perfect order they should be?
Pennington rose to his feet. That's enough. I'm through.
He made for the door. But you will answer my question first.
They are in perfect order.
You were not so alarmed then when the news of Lynette Ridgway's marriage reached you that you rushed over to Europe by the first boat and staged an apparently fortuitous meeting in Egypt. Pennington came back towards them. He had himself under control once more.
What you are saying is absolute balderdash. I didn't even know that Lynette was married till I met her in Cairo. I was utterly astonished. Her letter must have missed me by a day in New York. It was forwarded to me, and I got it a week later.
You came over by the Carmanic, you said?
Yes, that's right.
And the letter reached New York. And the letter reached New York after the Carmanic sailed.
How many times have I got to repeat it?
'Tis strange.
What's strange?
But on your luggage there are no labels of the Carmanic. The only recent labels of transatlantic sailing are the Normandy. The Normandy, I remember, sailed 2 days after the Carmanic.
Come now, Mr. Pennington, said Colonel Race. We've several reasons for believing you came over on the Normandy, not by the Carmanic. We've several reasons for believing you came over on the Normandy and not by the Carmanic, as you said. And in that case you received Mrs. Doyle's letter before you left New York. It's no good denying it. It's the easiest thing in the world to check up on the steamship companies.
Andrew Pennington felt absent-mindedly for a chair and sat down. His face was impassive, a poker face, and behind that mask his agile brain looked ahead to the next move.
Well, I'll have to hand it to you, gentlemen. You've been too smart for me. But I did have reasons for acting as I did. No doubt. I give them to you. It must be understood I do so in confidence. I think you can trust us to behave fittingly. Naturally, though, I cannot give assurances blindly. Well, I'll come clean. There's some monkey business going on in England. It worried me. I couldn't do much about it by letter. The only thing was to come over and see for myself. What do you mean by monkey business? I've good reason to believe that Lynette was being swindled. By whom? Her British lawyer. Now, that's not the kind of accusation you can fling around anyhow. I made up my mind to come over myself right away and see into matters myself.
That does great credit to your vigilance, I am sure, but why the little deception about not having received the letter?
Well, I ask you. You can't butt in on a honeymoon couple without more or less coming down to brass tacks and giving your reasons. I thought it best to make the meeting accidental. Besides, I didn't know anything about the husband. He might have been mixed up in the racket for all I knew. In fact, said Colonel Race dryly, all your actions were actuated by pure disinterestedness. You've said it, Colonel.
There was a pause. Race glanced at Poirot. The little man leant forward. Monsieur Pennington, we do not believe a word of your story.
What the hell you don't? And what the hell do you believe?
We believe that Lynette Ridgway's unexpected marriage put you in a financial quandary, that you came over post-haste to try and find some way out of a mess that you are in, that is to say, some way of gaining time, and that, with that end in view, you endeavoured to obtain Madame Doyle's signature to certain documents and failed. That on the journey up the Nile, when walking along the cliff top at Abu Simbel, you dislodged a boulder which fell, and only very narrowly missed its object.
You're crazy!
We believe that the same kind of circumstances occurred on the return journey, That is to say, an opportunity presented itself of putting Madame Doyle out of the way at a moment when her death would be almost certainly ascribed to the action of another person. We not only believe, but know that it was your revolver which killed a woman who was about to reveal to us the name of a person who she had reason to believe killed both Lynette Doyle and the maid, Louise.
Hell!
A forcible ejaculation broke forth and interrupted Poirot's stream of eloquence.
What are you getting at? Are you crazy? What motive had I to kill Lynette? I wouldn't get her money. That goes to her husband. Why don't you pick on him? He's the one to benefit, not me.
Doyle never left the lounge on the night of the tragedy till he was shot and wounded in the leg. The impossibility of his walking a step after that is attested to by a doctor and a nurse, both independent and reliable witnesses. Simon Doyle could not have killed his wife. He could not have killed Louise Bouget. He most definitely did not kill Mrs. Otterbourne. You know that as well as we do.
I know he didn't kill her.
Pennington sounded a little calmer.
All I say is, why pick on me when I don't benefit by her death?
But, my dear sir, that is rather a matter of opinion. Madame Doyle was a keen woman of business, fully conversant with her own affairs, and very quick to spot irregularities. As soon as she took up the control of her property, which she would have done on her return to England, her suspicions were bound to be aroused. But now that she is dead, and that her husband, as you have just pointed out, inherits the whole thing, it is different. Simon Doyle knows nothing whatever of his wife's affairs, except that she was a rich woman. He is of a simple, trusting disposition. You will find it easy to place complicated statements before him, to involve a real issue in a net of figures, and to delay settlement with pleas of legal formalities and the recent depression. I think that it makes a very considerable difference to you whether you deal with the husband or the wife.
Your ideas are fantastic.
Time will show.
What did you say?
Time will show. This is a matter of 3 deaths, 3 murders. The law will demand the most searching investigation into the condition of Madame Doyle's estate. He saw the sudden sag in the other's shoulders and knew that he had won. Jim Fanthorpe's suspicions were well founded.
You have played and lost. It is useless to go on bluffing.
You don't understand. It's all square enough, really. It's been the damned slump. Wall Street's been crazy. But I'd staged a comeback. With luck, everything'll be okay by the middle of June.
With shaking hands, he took a cigarette, tried to light it. It failed. I suppose the boulder was a sudden temptation. You thought nobody saw you.
It was an accident. That was an accident, I swear.
The man leaned forward, his face working, his eyes terrified.
I stumbled and fell against it. I swear it was an accident.
The 2 men said nothing. Pennington suddenly pulled himself together. He was still a wreck of a man, but his fighting spirit had returned in a certain measure. He moved towards the door.
You can't pin that on me, gentlemen. It was an accident, and it wasn't I who shot her. Do you hear? You can't pin that on me either. And you never will.
He went out. As the door closed behind him, Race gave a deep sigh.
We got more than I thought we should. Admission of fraud, admission of attempted murder. Further than that, it's impossible to go. A man will confess more or less to attempted murder, but you won't get him to confess to the real thing.
Sometimes it can be done.
You've got a plan?
Poirot nodded. Then he said, ticking off the items on his fingers, "The garden at Aswan, Mr. Allerton's statement, the 2 bottles of nail polish, my bottle of wine, the velvet stole, the stained handkerchief, the pistol that was left on the scene of the crime, the death of Louise, the death of Madame Otterbourne. Yes, it's all there. Pennington didn't do it, Race."
"What?"
"Pennington didn't do it. He had the motive, yes. He had the will to do it, yes. He got so far as attempting to do it. Miss it too. For this crime something was wanted that Pennington had not got. This is a crime that needed audacity, swift and faultless execution, courage, indifference to danger, and a resourceful, calculating brain. Pennington hasn't got these attributes. He couldn't do a crime unless he knew it to be safe. This crime was not safe. It hung on a razor edge. It needed boldness. Pennington is not bold. He is only astute. Race looked at him with the respect one able man gives to another. You've got it well taped. I think so, yes. There are one or two things. The telegram, for instance, that Lynette Doyle read. I should like to get that cleared up. Oh, by Jove, we forgot to ask Doyle. He was telling us when poor old Ma Otterbourne came along. We'll ask him again. Presently. First, I have someone else to whom I wish to speak. Who's that? Tim Allerton. Allerton? Right, we'll get him here. He pressed a bell and sent the steward with a message. Tim Allerton entered with a questioning look. Steward said he wanted to see me. That is right, Monsieur Allerton. Sit down. Tim sat. His face was attentive, but very slightly bored. Anything I can do? In a sense, perhaps. What I really require is for you to listen. Tim's eyebrows rose in polite surprise. Certainly. I'm the world's best listener. Can be relied on to say, "Oh," at the right moments. Well, that is very satisfactory. Will be very expressive. Eh bien, let us commence. When I met you and your mother at Aswan, Monsieur Allerton, I was attracted to your company very strongly. To begin with, I thought your mother was one of the most charming people I had ever met. The weary face flickered for a moment. A shade of expression came into it. She is unique. But the second thing that interested me was your mention of a certain lady. Really? Yes, a Mademoiselle Joanna Southwood. You see, I had recently been hearing that name. For the last 3 years there have been certain jewel robberies that have been worrying Scotland Yard a good deal. They are what may be described as society robberies. The method is usually the same, the substitution of an imitation piece of jewellery for an original. My friend, Chief Inspector Japp, came to the conclusion that the robberies were not the work of one person, but of 2 people working in with each other very cleverly. He was convinced, from the considerable inside knowledge displayed, that the robberies were the work of people in a good social position. And finally his attention became riveted on Mademoiselle Joanna Southwood. Every one of the victims had either been a friend or an acquaintance of hers, and in each case she had either handled or been lent the piece of jewellery in question. Also her style of living was far in excess of her income. On the other hand, it was quite clear that the actual robbery, that is to say, the substitution, had not been accomplished by her. In some cases she had been out of England during the period when the jewellery must have been replaced. So gradually a little picture grew up in Chief Inspector Japp's mind. Madame Southwood was at one time associated with a guild of modern jewellery. He suspected that she handled the jewels in question, made accurate drawings of them, and got them copied by some humble but dishonest working jeweller, and that the third part of the operation was the successful substitution by another person. Somebody who could have been proved never to have handled the jewels, and never to have had anything to do with copies or imitations of precious stones. Of the identity of this other person Japp was ignorant. Certain things that fell from you in conversation interested me. A ring that disappeared when you were in Mallorca, the fact that you had been in a house party where one of these fake substitutions had occurred, your close association with Mademoiselle Southwood. There was also the fact that you obviously resented my presence, and tried to get your mother to be less friendly towards me. That might of course have been just personal dislike, but I thought not. You were too anxious to try and hide your distaste under a genial manner. Eh bien, after the murder of Lynette Doyle it is discovered that her pearls are missing. You comprehend. At once I think of you. But I am not quite satisfied, for if you are working, as I suspect, with Mademoiselle Southwood, who was an intimate friend of Madame Doyle's, then substitution would be the method employed, not barefaced theft. But then the pearls quite unexpectedly are returned, and what do I discover? They are not genuine, but imitation. I know then who the real thief is. It was the imitation string that was stolen and returned, an imitation which you had previously substituted for the real necklace. He looked at the young man in front of him. Tim was white under his tan. He was not so good a fighter as Pennington. His stamina was bad. He said, with an effort to sustain his mocking manner, "Indeed, and if so, what did I do with them?" "That I know also." The young man's face changed and broke up. "There is only one place where they can be. I have reflected, and my reason tells me it is so. Those pearls, Monsieur Allerton, are concealed in a rosary that hangs in your cabin. The beads of it are very elaborately carved. I think you had it made specially. Those beads unscrew, though you would never think so to look at them, and inside there will be a pearl, stuck with sequotine. Most police searchers respect religious symbols unless there is something obviously queer about them. You counted on that. I endeavoured to find out how Mademoiselle Smallwood sent the imitation necklace to you. She must have done so since you came here from Mallorca, on hearing that Madame Doyle would be here for her honeymoon. My theory is that it was sent in a book, a square hole being cut out of the pages in the middle. A book goes with the ends open and is practically never opened in the post." There was a pause, a long pause. Then Tim said quietly, "You win. It's been a good game, but it's over at last. There's nothing for it now, I suppose, but to take the medicine. Do you realize that you were seen that night?" "Seen?" "Yes. On the night that Lynette Doyle died, someone saw you leave her cabin just after 1 in the morning. Now look here, you aren't thinking—" "It wasn't I who killed her, I swear. I've been in the most awful stew. To have chosen that night of all others. God, it's been awful." "Yes, you must have had uneasy moments. But now that the truth has come out, you may be able to help us. Was Madame Doyle alive or dead when you stole the pearls?" "I don't know, honest to God, Monsieur Poirot, I don't know. I found out where she put them at night, on a little table by the bed. I crept in, felt very softly on the table, and grabbed them. I put the others down, then crept away again. I assumed, of course, that she was asleep." "Did you hear her breathing? Surely you would have listened for that?" "It was very still indeed. No, I can't remember actually hearing her breathe." "Was there any smell of smoke lingering in the air, as there would have been if a firearm had been discharged recently?" "I don't think so. I don't remember it." Then we are no further. Who was it saw me?" "Rosalie Otterbourne. She came round from the other side of the boat and saw you leave Lynette Doyle's cabin and go to your own." "So it was she who told you?" "Excuse me, she did not tell me." "But then how do you know?" "Because I am Hercule Poirot. I do not need to be told. When I taxed her with it, do you know what she said? She said, 'I saw nobody.' And she lied." "But why?" "Perhaps because she thought the man she saw was the murderer. It looked like that, you know." "Well, that seems to me all the more reason to tell you." Poirot shrugged his shoulders. "She did not think so, it seems," Tim said, a queer note in his voice. "She's an extraordinary sort of girl. She must have been through a pretty rough time with that mother of hers." "Yes, life has not been easy for her." "Poor kid." Then Tim looked towards Race. "Well, sir, where do we go from here? I admit taking the pearls from Lynette's cabin, and you'll find them just where you say they are. I'm guilty, all right. But as far as Miss Southwood is concerned, I'm not admitting anything. You've no evidence against her. How I got hold of a fake necklace is my business."
What a very correct attitude.
"Well, I'm always the gentleman. Perhaps you can imagine how annoying it was to me to find my mother cottoning on to you. I'm not a sufficiently hardened criminal to enjoy sitting cheek by jowl with a successful detective just before bringing off a rather risky coup. Some people might get a kick out of that. I didn't. Frankly, it gave me cold feet. But it did not deter you from making your attempt. I couldn't funk it to that extent. The exchange had to be made sometime, and I'd got a unique opportunity on this boat. A cabin only 2 doors off, Lynette herself so preoccupied with her own troubles, she wasn't likely to detect the change."
"I wonder if that was so."
"What do you mean?" Poirot pressed the bell. "I am going to ask Miss Otterbourne if she will come here for a minute."
Tim frowned, but said nothing.
A steward came and received the order, then went away with a message. Rosalie came after a few minutes. Her eyes reddened with recent weeping, widening a little at seeing Tim, but her old attitude of suspicion and defiance seemed entirely absent. She sat down, and with a new docility looked from Race to Poirot.
"We're very sorry to bother you, Miss Otterbourne," said Race gently.
He was slightly annoyed with Poirot. "It doesn't matter. It is necessary to clear up 1 or 2 points. When I asked you whether you saw anyone on the starboard deck at 1:10 this morning, your answer was that you saw nobody. Fortunately, I have been able to arrive at the truth without your help. Monsieur Allerton has admitted that he was in Lynette Doyle's cabin last night." She flashed a swift glance at Tim. Tim, his face grim and set, gave a curt nod. "The time is correct, Monsieur Allerton?" "Quite correct." Rosalie was staring at him. Her lips trembled, fell apart. "But you didn't... No, I didn't kill her. I'm a thief, not a murderer. It's all going to come out, you may as well know. I was after her pearls." "Mr. Allerton's story is that he went to her cabin last night and exchanged a string of fake pearls for the real ones." "Did you?" Her eyes were grave, sad, childlike. "Yes." There was a pause. Colonel Race shifted restlessly. Poirot said in a curious voice, "That, as I say, is Monsieur Allerton's story, partially confirmed by your evidence. That is to say, there is evidence that he did visit Lynette Doyle's cabin last night, but there is no evidence to show why he did so." "But you know why." "What do I know?" You know I've got the pearls." "Mais oui. I know you have the pearls. But I do not know when you got them. It may have been before last night. You said just now that Lynette Doyle would not have noticed the substitution. I am not so sure. Supposing she did notice, supposing even she knew who did it, supposing that last night she threatened to expose the whole business, and that she knew, and that you knew she meant to do so, and supposing that you overheard the scene in the saloon between Jacqueline de Belfort and Simon Doyle, and as soon as the saloon was empty you slipped in and secured the pistol, and then an hour later, when the boat had quietened down, you crept along to Lynette Doyle's cabin and made quite sure that no exposure would come." "My God!" Out of his ashen face, 2 tortured, agonized eyes gazed dumbly at Hercule Poirot. "But somebody else saw you. The girl Louise. The next day she came to you and blackmailed you. You must pay her handsomely or she would tell what she knew. You realized that to submit to blackmail would be the beginning of the end. You pretended to agree, made an appointment to come to her cabin just before lunch with the money. Then, when she was counting the notes, you stabbed her. But again, luck was against you. Somebody saw you go to her cabin." He half turned to Rosalie. "Your mother. Once again, you had to act dangerously, foolhardily. But it was the only chance. You had heard Pennington talk about his revolver, so you rushed into his cabin. You got hold of it. You listened outside Dr. Besner's cabin door. And then you shot Madame Otterbourne before she could reveal your name.
No, he didn't.
After that, you did the only thing you could do. You rushed around the stern, and when I rushed after you, you turned and pretended to be coming in the opposite direction. You had handled the revolver in gloves, and those gloves were in your pocket when I asked you for them, remember?
Before God, I swear it isn't true. Not a word of it.
But his voice, ill-assured and trembling, failed to convince. It was then that Rosalie Otterbourne surprised them.
Of course it isn't true, and Monsieur Poirot knows it isn't. He's saying it for some reason of his own.
I surrender, mademoiselle. You are too clever. But you agree it is a good case.
What the devil?
Tim began with rising anger, but Poirot held up a hand.
There is a good case against you, Monsieur Allerton, and I wanted you to realize it.
Now I will tell you something more pleasant.
I have not yet examined that rosary in your cabin. It may be that when I do, I shall find nothing there. And then, since Mademoiselle Otterbourne sticks to it that she saw no one on the deck last night, bien, there is no case against you at all. The pearls were taken by a kleptomaniac who has since returned them. They are in a little box on the table by the door. If you would like to examine them with mademoiselle.
Tim got up. He stood for a moment unable to speak. When he did, his words seemed inadequate, but it's possible that they satisfied his listeners.
Thanks. You won't have to give me another chance.
He held the door open for the girl. She passed out, and picking up the little cardboard box, he followed her. Side by side they went. Tim opened the box, took out the sham string of pearls, and hurled it far from him into the Nile.
There, that's gone. When I return the box to Poirot, the real string will be there. What a damned fool I've been!
Why did you come to do it in the first place?
How did I come to start, you mean? Dunno. Boredom. Laziness. The fun of the thing. It's such a much more attractive way of earning a living than just pegging away at a job. Oh, it sounds pretty sordid to you, I expect. But you know there was an attraction about it. Mainly the risk, I suppose.
I think I understand. But you wouldn't ever do it. Rosalie considered for a moment or two. Her grave young head bent. No, I wouldn't. Oh, my dear, you're so lovely. So utterly lovely. Why wouldn't you say you'd seen me last night? I thought they might suspect you. Did you suspect me? No, I couldn't believe you'd kill anyone. No, I'm not the strong stuff murderers are made of. I'm only a miserable sneak thief. She put out a timid hand and touched his arm. Don't say that. He caught her hand in his. Rosalie, would you... You know what I mean. Or would you always despise me and throw it in my teeth? There are things you could throw in my teeth too. Oh, Rosalie, darling. But she held back a minute longer. This Joanna. Tim gave a sudden shout.
Joanna! You're as bad as mother. I don't care a damn about Joanna. She's got a face like a horse and a predatory eye. She's a most unattractive female.
Your mother need never know about you. Oh, I'm not sure. I think I shall tell her. Mother's got plenty of stuffing, you know. She can stand up to things. Yes, I think I shall shatter her maternal illusions about me. She'll be so relieved to know that my relations with Joanna were purely of a business nature that she'll forgive me everything else. They'd come to Mrs. Allerton's cabin, and Tim knocked firmly on the door. It opened, and Mrs. Allerton stood on the threshold. Rosalie and I...
Oh, my dears,
said Mrs. Allerton. She folded Rosalie in her arms.
My dear, dear child, I always hoped... Oh, but Tim was so tiresome and pretended he didn't like you. Oh, but of course I saw through that,
Rosalie said in a broken voice. You've been so sweet to me. I used to wish... She broke off and sobbed happily on Mrs. Allerton's shoulder. As the door closed behind Tim and Rosalie, Poirot looked somewhat apologetically at Colonel Race. The Colonel was looking rather grim. "You will consent to my little arrangement, yes? It is irregular, I know it is irregular, yes. But I have a high regard for human happiness."
"You've none for mine."
"Oh, that jeune fille, I have a tenderness towards her, and she loves that young man. It will be an excellent match. She has the stiffening he needs. The mother likes her. Everything thoroughly suitable."
"In fact, the marriage has been arranged by Heaven and Hercule Poirot. All I have to do is compound a felony."
"But, mon ami, I told you it was all conjecture on my part."
"Conjecture? Oh, it's all right by me. I'm not a damned policeman, thank God. I dare say the young fool will go straight enough now. The girls are straight all right. No, what I'm complaining of is your treatment of me. I'm a patient man, but there are limits to my patience. Do you know who committed the 3 murders on this boat, or don't you?" "I do." "Then why all this beating about the bush?"
"You think that I am just amusing myself with side issues, and it annoys you? But it is not that. Once I went professionally to an archaeological expedition, and I learnt something there. In the course of an excavation, when something comes up out of the ground, everything is cleared away, very, very carefully all around it. You take away the loose earth, and you scrape here and there with a knife, until finally your object is there, all alone, ready to be drawn and photographed, with no extraneous matter confusing it. That is what I have been seeking to do. Clear away the extraneous matter so that we can see the truth. The naked, shining truth." "Good. Let's have this naked, shining truth. It wasn't Pennington. It wasn't young Allerton. I presume it wasn't Fleetwood. Let's hear who it was, for a change." "My friend, I am just about to tell you.